Cooking Healthy with Coastline, and I'm registered dietitian Ashley Wewell, and today we're going to be making a really quick and delicious vegetarian dish. We have our spicy vegetarian bell peppers. So this recipe is really simple and it comes together super quick, so it can be great for an addition into your busy week. And also it's vegetarian, so if you're interested in trying out a meatless Monday, this would be a great addition to your menu. Of course, too, you can make this, use any sort of animal protein that you prefer, whether chicken or beef, but today we're going to be focusing on our plant-based proteins. So we have our black beans, chickpeas, and then also we're going to be getting a little bit of protein from our quinoa. So quinoa is a really great addition to any stuffed pepper dish or any side in place of rice. It is considered a whole grain, so it has lots of fiber and it's going to be great for that heart health. It also is packed with a good amount of protein per serving, considering that it is a whole grain. Today we're also going to be using some of our chicken broth, and we're going to make it a little bit spicy. So we have our jalapenos and some green chili peppers. But if you don't like things a little spicy, you can always leave out the jalapenos. So we are going to get our quinoa started. Quinoa is relatively quick to cook. We are going to be using 1 cup of quinoa to 2 cups of chicken broth. So to make this a little bit more cardiac friendly, we are going with a low sodium option. And like I said, just 2 cups of chicken broth for this. And then you can always save the rest of the chicken broth for another recipe. It does come in handy for a lot of things. So we'll get our chicken broth in there. Don't have to let it boil or anything. We're just going to combine our 1 cup of quinoa right in there. And we'll just give it a little stir just to incorporate it. And then we're going to go ahead, turn up the heat a little to about medium, and then we'll just cover it. So that's going to simmer and boil up for about 15 minutes. And then after 15 minutes, you want to let it sit again for another 10 to 12 minutes, just so it can get nice and fluffy and airy. All right, while our quinoa is cooking, we already have our oven preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to get started on our peppers. So this recipe does call to use a few, but we're just going to be doing 3. Of course, you can always alter to how many you actually need. But we're just going to cut off the tops of our bell peppers. And bell peppers are a great vegetable to have on hand. They are pretty diverse. You can use them in a lot of different recipes. They are great for stuffed peppers like what we're doing today. But you can also, as you know, use them in like your tomato sauces, or if you're going to be making sautés. They're a great item to have on hand. So if you want, you can just cut the top off, get rid of that and discard it. You can also use the scraps to put in the filling if you prefer. And try to cut off the tops as close to the top as you can, just so that way you're left with a good amount of pepper. We're just going to put them right into our casserole dish and fit as many as we can. Bell peppers are also great because they're very high in vitamin C. Not many people know that. It actually has more vitamin C than an orange. So if you're looking to get in those extra nutrients, a pepper is going to be a great addition again. Of course, we want as much color as we can, so you can always stick just to red peppers if that's what you prefer, or I like the orange and the yellow, and that's what we're going for today. So just to make sure that we have enough room for our stuffing, I am going to try to remove a little bit of that white part of the pepper. And too, that part of the pepper on the inside tends to be a little bit on the bitter end, so removing it will just make sure that it tastes even more delicious. All right, so we have all of our seeds and everything removed. We have our peppers in the bowl. We're just going to take a little bit of extra virgin olive oil and drizzle a little bit over the top. And then we are going to add just a little bit of salt and pepper. Just for a little extra seasoning. All right, and then we're gonna throw these into our oven for about 15 to 20 minutes. We'll just keep an eye on those. You want them to be all the way cooked through so that way they're nice and soft and tender for when we add our stuffing. So while that is in the oven, we already have our stovetop going, preheating this pan. We're gonna put it up to about medium-high heat. And we're going to add a little bit of our olive oil again, just to get it going. Probably will add a little bit more. All right, so now we're going to start making our stuffing mix. We have a white onion. We're going to be using half of that. We need about 2 to 3 garlic cloves, and then we have our jalapeno. Again, you can always leave out the jalapeno if you don't like spice. Totally a preference, up to you. I know I love spice, so the spicier the better. So we're just using half of our onion. And you want to make sure that all the skin is off. You don't want that surprise when you're trying to bite into your onion or your mixture later. So remove any extra skin. And then we're just going to do a rough chop of our onion. If you prefer to use a sweet onion, you could always do that too. A white onion, though, is just going to keep it a nice neutral flavor. Just give it a rough chop. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we're just going to push that to the side and then give our garlic cloves a quick chop. So if you wanted to save yourself a little bit of time, you could always buy minced garlic already at the grocery store, so you don't have to go through the peeling process and chopping and all that. Garlic can be a little tricky, or just, you know, if you need some extra time-saving tips, just going for that already minced garlic at the store. So we have our 2 to 3 garlic cloves. And if you want to add a little bit more, that's always up to you. I prefer a lot of garlic, so I always go a little bit more than what the recipe calls for. And then we're just going to give it a little push down, crushing that garlic clove just to make it a little bit easier to peel. And we're going to remove any of that extra peel that we have there. Also, if you have a garlic peeler or a smasher at your house, that would be a great tool to use also. So as you can see, it does take a little bit of time, but that's okay, we'll get there. Also, if you're someone who maybe has a little bit of issues with handling garlic, you can always leave this out. The onion itself will provide enough flavor. Or two, you can just make sure that when you're cooking it, that you are just cooking down the garlic enough to be able to digest it a little bit easier. So again, we're just gonna give the garlic a nice rough chop, just real quick. Try to get the pieces as small as possible as you can, unless you like big pieces of garlic. Again, I'm a garlic girl, I love garlic, so if the pieces are a little bit on the bigger side, that's totally fine for me personally. But we want to go for a minced garlic here. All right, so I think our pan is nice and hot. Yep, and we're just gonna move around that olive oil just to make sure that it's evenly coated. And we'll throw in our onion and our garlic, get that sauteing. I'm gonna turn this down just a little bit. We don't want to burn anything, especially our garlic. Alrighty. So while that is sauteing, we're gonna get our jalapeno pepper going. In this too, you want to try to remove any seeds. Leaving in the seeds will make it extra spicy. So again, if you're looking for just some mild spice, removing those peppers will be removing the seeds will make it a little bit on the more mild side. And two, you want to make sure that you wash your hands before you touch your face after handling the jalapeno pepper. So turn this down again. Give it a quick stir. Alrighty. So we'll give this a quick chop. We'll slice it down the middle again. So you want your jalapeno pieces to be nice and small, so that way it's evenly distributed throughout your stuffing mixture for the quinoa. And if you are someone who likes a lot more spice than a jalapeno, you could always try going for like a serrano pepper or getting really crazy with like, I don't know, a habanero pepper, but that's a little too much even for me. So we're gonna stick to our jalapeno and get that in there. So we're really only gonna be sauteing our onions and our pepper just for a little bit. As you can see, it's already starting to brown up. So we can already start adding in our other ingredients here. All right, so we have 1 can of diced tomato. You want a 15-ounce can for this recipe, and you're not gonna drain the tomatoes. You wanna keep them in their juices. That's what's gonna add a lot of the flavor to our recipe. So we're gonna add that right in there. Just give that a quick stir. Get that through. And then we're gonna add in our beans, our chickpeas, our corn, and our chili peppers. So again, we're using just the 15-ounce can of both the black beans, our chickpeas, and then 1 cup of the sweet corn. So you can buy the smaller can of canned corn that they have in the grocery section for canned vegetables. And then just our small little jar of our jalapeno peppers. So we have that all together. Now we're just gonna mix it. And a lot of the time, so we are using canned vegetables here, and that is perfectly fine. Canned vegetables can be a great addition or a great staple to have in your pantry. What we did before was we drained our beans and our corn and just gave them a quick rinse. So if you're unable to find lower sodium options, it is a good idea to make sure that you're rinsing your vegetables or your beans once you open them. That will actually help to reduce the sodium content by at least 25%. So if you're someone who really needs to watch for your sodium, that is a good tip to just keep in mind. You can also use frozen too. So we have our taco seasoning. You could also make your own taco seasoning at home, but for convenience sake, we just bought a packet, and we are going to be using, again, the 25% lower sodium. So just going to throw that in there. We still have a little bit of time on that quinoa, but once that is all finished, that will get added to our mixture. So really in no time, our meal is almost done. We still have a little bit of time on those peppers in the oven. But for the most part, things are looking really good. All right, so we have all of our mixtures together. We have our beans, our corn, our tomatoes, our onions, and some of those jalapeno peppers with our taco seasoning all mixed up. And we're just gonna let that simmer for a little bit. So again, on medium, low heat, and we have our quinoa going. And once our quinoa is ready, we'll throw in the rest of that, and then we'll just get going on stuffing our peppers. So it's been 15 minutes since our quinoa has been completed cooking. We've let it sit for another 10-12 minutes just to let the rest of the moisture soak into that quinoa. So we're going to just fluff up real quick our quinoa just to make sure that everything is well incorporated. And we're just gonna take that quinoa and throw it right into our pan with the rest of our mixture. So again, this was just a cup of quinoa with 2 cups of low sodium chicken broth. Just get that right in there. And then we're just gonna give it a quick stir just to incorporate everything. Our peppers are still in the oven. They've been in there for about 20 minutes, so they should be ready to go. And once we have all of this just well incorporated and mixed together, we'll just take our peppers out and put our stuffing right into the peppers. At this point too, if you want to add a little bit more salt and pepper, you can do that. We might just add a little bit more just to make sure. But that taco seasoning packet is going to be loaded with flavor, so don't have to worry too much about adding a lot extra. So just give that a little stir. All right, and that should be ready to go. So we're going to take our peppers out of the oven. All right, so they're sizzling away, nice and soft. If you like it to be a little bit crunchier, that's up to you, but we made sure that they were cooked all the way through. And we're just going to load up our peppers. So if it overflows a little bit, that's perfectly fine. I think the more the better. And then too, you're gonna have some leftovers. So depending on how big your baking dish is and how many peppers you can fit into it, you can probably have enough mixture for the peppers, but we are gonna have a little bit left over since my baking dish is just a little bit on the smaller side. So we got our peppers stuffed with our quinoa. And now we're gonna be using some Mexican style cheese, some shredded cheese. If you want, you can shred the cheese yourself, but for convenience, we're gonna be using store-bought cheese. So go ahead and just put a little bit on each one. You can also omit this step. You don't have to add cheese if you like, but I think the cheese makes it even more delicious. So we have that covered, and we're just gonna throw our peppers back into the oven for just a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, just so our cheese melts. So it's been 2 to 3 minutes, and our cheese should be nice and melted on our peppers. So we're gonna go ahead and remove them. All right, and those look perfect. Super delicious. So now we're gonna go ahead and plate our peppers. And to garnish for your peppers, you could always, we have cilantro today and we have a little bit of lime that I'm gonna cut up. You could also garnish with sour cream or Greek yogurt, some green onions, whatever your preference is. So we're gonna go ahead and try to get this on the plate, make it look nice and pretty without them falling apart. And again, this is where having some extra color really plays into it. It makes it look nice and pretty. So if you are having people over for dinner, it looks nice and presentable. So we're going to just garnish a little bit with, like I said, our lime. You can keep this on the side if you like. Just throw a few in the corners and then top with our cilantro. So you can go ahead and chop this, or I'm just going to tear it right off and place it on top. And if you really wanted to, if you want some extra cheese, you could also add some extra cheese at this point. Some people love their cheese, so just a little bit of garnish here to add a little bit more color and some extra flavor. And there you have it. So here we have our spicy vegetarian stuffed peppers filled with our plant-based protein and quinoa. Great for a meatless Monday or a quick dinner throughout the week when you're, in a crunch. So I hope you guys try this recipe. Let us know what you think of it, and thanks for watching.